When God said, "Let there be light," Chuck Norris said, "Say please." Why is this joke funny? Or at least it was funny a few years ago when Chuck Norris jokes were an internet favorite. Because in the joke, you are to believe Chuck Norris is more powerful than God. I know explaining a joke clearly makes it funnier, but in today's episode, we'll explore the facial feature God and Chuck Norris share that no doubt is seen as a contributing factor to their power. At least according to the jokes on the internet. I'm your host, Emily Prokop, and this is the story behind beards. But first, a quick message. If I don't say it enough, or you don't reach the end of every episode, I want to take this time to thank you, the listener. Thank you for joining the Story Behind Facebook group, liking the Facebook page, following the Story Behind on Twitter, Instagram, and the new Pinterest page. Thank you so much for the financial support people have donated to the Story Behind's Patreon page. Thank you for sending me messages about how you take the Story Behind with you on road trips with your family, and messages about how you've thrown a TSB fact into water cooler talk at work. And thank you for telling your friends about the Story Behind. I'm incredibly lucky to have you, and somehow when I lose motivation to write episodes for the week, a form of listener feedback will come in and get me all amped up with the feeling that I could write 10 episodes in a single afternoon. So, thank you. In researching the history of beards, it's funny to note how they go from the height of fashion to shunned and back again, repeating this cycle since prehistoric men grew them as a way to stay warm and protect the mouth from the elements. It was also a means of intimidation, since it creates the illusion of a stronger jawline. Ancient civilizations seemed to prize beards. They were seen as a sign of wisdom and dignity, or dyed and curled in parts of Asia. And early Egyptian kings and queens used to tie fake metal beards on their chins with a ribbon over their heads. Ancient Grecians saw beards as a sign of honor, and prisoners and thieves would even have their beards cut off as a form of punishment. It wasn't until 354 BCE that Alexander the Great mandated that soldiers had to cut or shave their beards, with the fear that those fighting against his armies would grab hold of them during battle. As time went on, the fashion of the beard was determined by region, social status, or religion. At one point during the 16th and 17th centuries, beards were thought to have a connection to the genitals, and they became a marker for virility because of that. Similarly, a lion's mane is seen as a sign of potency and part of sexual selection for female lions. By the time Christopher Columbus came to America, he and those in his company assumed that those with beards were primitive and uncivilized. But when they met Native Americans and saw they were clean-shaven, their ideal did a 180, and beards became the style again to show sophistication and dominance. But the style was flipped back again by the time the Declaration of Independence was written, and wigs were the in thing at the time. I could go on about the number of times when beards were in or out of fashion, but that would take up the whole episode. But remember back to the story behind 30 Random Things? It was a letter from a little girl that prompted Abraham Lincoln to grow his now famous chin whiskers? Well, we're going off on a bit of a tangent because without Lincoln's beard, we wouldn't have the game of life. No, really. When Abraham Lincoln was running for office, he was clean-shaven, and a lithograph maker by the name of Milton Bradley was selling portraits of him in Massachusetts. From the main print, he figured he would be selling those portraits for the next 4 years, and he'd be set for the duration of his presidency. Until Lincoln got that letter telling him to grow a beard to appeal to more people. Once the beard grew in, Bradley's lithographs were useless since no one wanted an old portrait of the president. It was then he began drafting what was originally known as the checkered game of life. Gameplay was pretty similar to today's version. A player would spin a teetotum, which was a top that would determine how many spaces a player would move, and move to the appropriate space on what looked like a larger checkers board to see what would happen in their life. By the way, I heard this for the first time on a Comedy Central show called Drunk History, which I wouldn't recommend for younger viewers, but for the adults it's pretty hilarious. More than half of the world's males have facial hair, and don't worry, we'll be talking about mustaches in the next episode. But at this point, a beard is more of an aesthetic feature rather than serving a purpose. And sorry guys, but women are said to find men with full beards 2/3 as attractive as men without facial hair. But that doesn't stop many men, like my husband, from growing beards for special events like when their favorite sports team is in the playoffs. Depictions of God often have him sporting a beard, and similarly pictures of Jesus. There's no passage in the Bible about beards, but many Orthodox Christians, as well as other religions like Hinduism and Judaism, are pro-facial hair. Theologians think this is because the ability to grow facial hair is a symbol of masculinity, and also because various prophets are known to have beards. But beards hold a special place in pop culture. If I were to tell you to picture a wizard, your first thought may be Merlin from Arthurian legend, or Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings, or Dumbledore from Harry Potter. It's no coincidence that these three particular wizards have similar features, including the long, flowing white beard. In fact, Ian McKellen, who played Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, was offered the role of Dumbledore following the death of Richard Harris, who originated the role. But Harris disliked McKellen so much, McKellen didn't feel right about taking over the role. But it's easy enough to picture him putting on the white beard again and calling himself Dumbledore. But the beard associated with wizards, especially older wizards, are used in movies, books, and illustrations to denote age and wisdom. But don't discount beards for being just for the magically fierce. Plenty of action heroes sport beards and facial hair, including the meme favorite Chuck Norris, who is said to be hiding another fist behind his beard. Well, I read it on the internet, so it must be true. Information for this episode was sourced from Slate, The New Yorker, The Atlantic, and more links which can be found in the show notes at thestorybehindpodcast.com. Want to talk more about this episode or past episodes of The Story Behind? Join the Story Behind discussion group on Facebook by clicking the link in the show notes or by going to bit.ly/TSB Facebook. Thanks for listening.